Before you start counting the days to your due date, watch this. Because did you know that the very things that you're trying to do to plan a natural birth can actually sabotage you? And your due date is one of those things. In fact, your due date can actually undermine your confidence, push you into medical interventions that you don't want, or otherwise sabotage your true natural birth process. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth Series, where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered, true natural birth. And today, we are going into the 20 natural birth traps, trap number 2, due dates. If you've been following along with this series, then you know that right now, we are going into the 20 natural birth traps. You can go and get that guide off my website. Just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies to get this list, as well as other lists of traps that you want to avoid or things you don't want to put in your birth plan. Or you can go into the description of this video and grab it there. I also want to let you know that this video comes with a transcript. This is not a typical transcript. In fact, I give you the highlight reel of the entire video. So you can skim, you can just look at the headlines, you can get the overall gist of it, but the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more information you're going to uncover, because information is free and I only charge for access to me. So I have 3 paths for getting what I call the empowered birth method, which allows you to get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. You can also learn more about that inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth. It is behind me, as you can see. You can check out the Empowered Birth book playlist on my YouTube channel to get more information, or you can just get the book off of Amazon. This book is basically everything that I wish I had known as a first-time mom when I was planning my natural birth. And even when I was planning my second baby, even though I was a birth advocate and I thought that I knew all of the things that I needed to know, and I applied the empowered birth method, but there were still some things that I made mistakes on, which I later corrected by teaching my clients and watching them have their own empowered births. And I will tell you more about that deeper into this video. And if you want to learn more, you can always go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and that will give you the overview. It will give you the success stories of the moms. But here's the basic thing you need to understand about natural birth traps, is that a natural birth trap is basically what it sounds like. It's a trap. You thought that you were going to have a natural birth, and instead you got trapped, and now your birth is more painful, more traumatic, or you even ended up having a C-section, and you're like, what happened? What happened to my natural birth plan? I did everything right. I read the books. I took the classes. I watched the videos. I was preparing my body. I hired a midwife, or I hired somebody who said they supported natural birth. Why didn't it work for me? And you know, you've been led to believe that it's because your body is broken and defective or doesn't go into labor on its own. And then this leads you to thinking that you just don't birth effectively. And that is why it's a trap. So before we get into the natural birth trap itself, what I'm going to tell you is that you need to know the difference between natural birth in the medical system and our birth culture and true natural birth. Because here at Empowering Mom's Birth, I'm not just committed to you having a natural birth, I'm committed to you getting a true natural birth. This is also called a physiological birth if you go into most of the literature that's given to birth workers or what birth workers are talking about when they're saying physiological birth. And I know that it can be really daunting to try to figure out between the two. After all, a lot of what we've been perpetuating in our mainstream birth culture has been natural birth. Now, if you really want to know the metaphor for this, I do have an overview on my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. But the gist of it is that true natural birth is organic ice cream. You get to pet the cows. It's from a dairy farm. You know exactly where the ingredients are coming from. And natural birth, as is perpetuated in our medical system and birth culture, of which the natural birth traps are naturally part of, this type of birth is the preservative-laden frozen dessert version of natural birth, where you were looking for ice cream and you didn't look at the label properly. You just saw the picture on there and it's like, oh, it looks like ice cream, and you take it home and then you realize after you've pulled it out that you didn't grab the ice cream, you grabbed the frozen dessert. And now there's a whole bunch of ingredients on that list that you don't know how to pronounce. And you're like, what the heck is this? I wanted organic ice cream. Well, this is what happens when you go into the medical system and you go into our overall birth culture, the mom groups even, or you're getting a book and you don't know the difference between true natural birth, the physiological process that your body is going to do, whether anything happens on the outside or not, versus natural birth that is often more painful, traumatic, it's hard to get, and you're like, well, I had a natural birth or I had an unmedicated birth, but it's not actually the real thing. It's not organic. And, I don't want you to feel any shame for that. Okay? You don't need to feel any shame, any guilt if you did not have a physiological birth. If you realize as you're going through these trainings that I have on my website or inside of the YouTube channel, and you realize that the natural birth that you thought you had, that you're like, it didn't go very well, and I want to know how I can do better because I didn't prepare my body before, and you realize, oh, I didn't have a physiological birth, there's no shame attached to that, okay? We're going to release our shame and we're going to recognize that it's actually our birth culture that we have been immersed in, that the medical system has been immersed in. Fish can't see the water they swim in. And now we're going to get you out of that. And the first step is knowing these natural birth traps. I also have another video series called The 26 Things That You Need to Know If This Is Your First Time Planning a True Natural Birth. And that will give you more information on the difference between true natural birth and natural birth perpetuated in the medical system, as well as how to advocate for yourself and basically navigate this whole culture of fear that we have been immersed in. And if you really want a structured version of this, I encourage you to go through the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge. This is again inside of the playlist. It is the first step to getting an empowered birth, because part of the empowered birth method, aside from aiming for a true natural birth and pulling back only as much as needed, is you need to get past your fear. And this is what I hope to accomplish today by telling you about this due date natural birth trap. If you want to know the actual nitty-gritty of due dates and everything, I do have another video inside of the 26 things you need to know if this is your first time planning a natural birth series. And that is all on due dates. I went deep into how they really don't serve you in getting a natural birth, how it actually tricks you. But today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go deep, as I usually do with these master classes, into all of these details around why this is a natural birth trap. The series is basically, I'm going to give you the overview. This is a trap. Here is why it's a trap. Here's a story around why it's a trap. Here's how it undermines your confidence. Here's how the medical system adds more pressure onto you that causes you to agree to the intervention that you don't want. Here is how it sabotages your physiological process and your mental process, so your mindset. And then I also tell you a little bit about how the medical system can push you into these traps or what it does to you. And I finish off with the empowered birth method, how you can get out of it. I give you additional resources. I tell you about my 3 paths, again, to empowered birth. I tell you anything else that's relevant within the context of the video. And then I finish off and tell you the next one that's coming up in the series. So these are deep dive master classes, okay? I don't put any fluff in here, so it's not like I'm just going to tell you a nice story and then you have to go buy my course to get the information. No, I'm actually going to encourage you to take some time, make sure there's no distractions, and sit down and take notes. If you are doing the do-it-yourself path, this is what you really need to do. and I'm also going to let you know about the rule of 3. Now, I'll talk more about the rule of 3 at the end of this as well to tell you more about how it works if you're not familiar. If you are familiar, that's okay as well, but it's helpful to have this repeated because the more you hear something, and this is part of the rule of 3, the more it sinks in. So if we've been in a society that basically perpetuates these natural birth traps as how to have a natural birth, the rule of 3 will allow you to start deprogramming yourself. If you really want to deprogram, though, you want to go and check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge. You want to read my book, Your Empowered Birth. And you're also going to want to get your Empowered Birth Workshop, which is a free series of videos. It's basically a course that you can go through completely self-study. You even get guides to other things that couldn't go into the course itself. So if it's like, oh, I want to know how to choose my birth location, there is a guide for that. There's also an ebook on some of the natural birth traps, going deeper into that. And there are things on birth advocacy and telling your care provider no. There's workbooks that come with this. And ultimately, what I'm aiming to do is ensure that you have an empowered birth, whether you can work with me or not. The reason for that is because I don't work with just anyone that comes to me because of how much time that it takes to do this coaching session. There's a lot of energy involved. So information is free. You only pay for access to me. So now that you understand a little bit about the 3 paths and you know that repetition is key, which is the rule of 3, if you repeat something 3 times, you are more likely to get it. And if you're taking notes, this is also going to help you integrate. Let's go into the story of why these due dates can be such a problem. And I'm going to tell you 2 stories technically blended together. Okay, it's a tale of 2 moms. 2 moms that were basically due around the same time frame. We were basically in this space of she was due in April, I was due in May. And we were in the same prenatal classes together. So within her midwife practice, they had these free pregnancy drop-ins for moms that had reached the 28-week mark. And even though I had already taken birth education with a nurse and she had been doing the prenatal classes through the health unit and everything with the big group of students, I was the only one in there that actually had a midwife and was planning a home birth. So the fact that my midwife practice was also doing these prenatal classes made me really happy because now I was with some moms that were still with midwives, though I was still pretty much one of the few that was actually planning a home birth. Now, I want to also flash forward a little bit more because during these prenatal drop-ins, after I had my baby, I discovered that a lot of moms still were not getting their natural births that they wanted. A lot of them had been induced. A lot of them had C-sections. A lot of them struggled to breastfeed. Even with these midwives and their efforts to try to shift the birth culture and help these women, in the end, it just wasn't enough. And this is, again, why the right mindset is important, because if we are unlearning what we're taught, and we understand about true natural birth versus natural birth perpetuated in the medical system and these natural birth traps, then we do not fall victim to that. Okay, so for me, as the first-time mom coming in, I was the star student. I was the one that was constantly consuming birth education. And I had actually started before I got pregnant because I wanted to get out of my head and I wanted to have a baby, but I was terrified of all of the interventions that come with that, or what I thought came with that. And as I was learning this is when I got pregnant with my son, not intentionally, but it happened. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my goodness, this baby has to come out. I have 9 months to figure this out, so I might as well do the thing that scares me, which is not go to the hospital. I'm not going to go to the hospital, and I'm going to actually experience a completely unmedicated home birth. And my family was like, that's not going to happen. And it didn't, but I did still have a natural birth. And then I went and had my home birth with my second baby. I reclaimed my power. You can go and read my whole story inside of Your Empowered Birth if you're not already familiar with it. But so I'm coming in and I'm excited. I'm planning a home birth. I'm ready to give birth to my son. And I'm taking all of this education in. And there's one other mom that she's kind of planning a hospital birth, and she also wants to have a completely natural birth. And she's a few weeks ahead of me. Okay, so she is due in April and I'm due in May. I'm actually due May 10th and she's due in like mid-April. And what happens during this time, if you've watched my other video where I talked about growth scans, is I had to go in for growth scans. So when I started going in for these non-stress tests and these growth scans at the hospital, this is when I ran into her. This is Christine. She used to be my partner when we were doing the Improving Birth rallies in our community. She was like the first one that came on board with me. And she also had a home birth after cesarean with her second baby. You can read about her story inside of Your Empowered Birth. There's also an interview inside of the Positive Birth Stories playlist where Christine is telling her story way back in 2021 of what happened and how she reclaimed her power. But basically, she is coming out of, I guess, a non-stress test or something, and we run into each other in the lobby. And I'm like, oh, hey, you're still here. And it's like, yep, I'm still here. We're trying to get this baby out because I've hit 40 weeks and nothing's happening. Now, the sad thing for Christine is she continued to try to get into labor because the midwife practice that we were with said, we can't keep you past 42 weeks. You'll have to go with an OB if you don't induce. So in Christine's case, she was on a clock, and this is where due dates are really a trap, is because it puts you on a clock that you may not actually fit. And if you read Dr. Sarah Wickham's book, In Your Own Time, you're really going to understand this. But it is a very dense book. There's a lot of numbers. It's very academic-minded. So if you like something that's a little bit easier, I'm going to encourage you to check out the video on due dates that I have inside of the Empowered Birth series. And if you go into the description of this video and look at the transcript, I've got it linked for you. Okay, so you just go in there, you find the link, you click it, you've got the thing that you need. So basically what this is I'm giving you the overview with this video, and I'm also going to allow you to go into the Wonderland and go through whatever rabbit hole you want, because all ways are the Queen's way, and you are an empowered birth queen, whether you realize it or not yet, just by getting this information. So Christine, as I said, was going through it, trying to get into labor before this cutoff period, and she didn't make it. She ended up being pushed into an induction, which her baby and her body were not ready for, because Christine, as we have later discovered, is a 42-week to late 41-week mama. She just cooks her babies longer. And what happened is that they're like, well, you're not progressing, so we're going to break your waters. And when they broke the waters, the decels happened, and it was a crash. It was like, no, we've got to get you in for a C-section. And the way that Christine told this story inside of our birth trauma group, it just hit me viscerally, because I knew that there were so many moms that had been talked into these inductions. And I'm like, but there was nothing wrong with the baby. You were just overdue. Why did they do this to you? And Christine was also incredibly wrecked by this. In fact, I can tell you right now that when we were running our first Improving Birth rally, because I wanted to be a rally coordinator, I really supported what Dawn Thompson was doing at the time. She had basically lit a fire in me, because of all of the visceral stories that had come out around that time of moms being tricked, I wasn't the only one who had felt that pressure to induce. Now, in my case, they said my baby was too small, and they kept saying, well, if your baby doesn't grow, we'll have to induce. I'm like, I'm not inducing until there's actually a problem. And I got to 40 weeks and I'm breathing a sigh of relief. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can go into labor and I won't have this looming over my head. And then almost a week passed by before I had my baby. But even then I was starting to kind of feel antsy because I knew from the fact that Christine was also getting that pressure before to induce. And I understood that you could only go so far and then they were going to talk induction. I had even got this at my appointment when I came in. I was still pregnant at about 40 weeks and 2 days. And the midwife is like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes and we'll do a sweep. And if you don't go into labor by next week, then we'll start talking about induction. And I had already been thinking to myself, I'm not going to induce. First of all, they said that my baby was too small. So I'm going to let him have as much time as he needs. And this is important because Christine's baby was 6 pounds when he was born at 42 weeks by cesarean. So he probably did need a little bit more time to bulk up. And the fact is that we don't actually know how long babies are set to gestate. It could be anywhere from 37 weeks to 42 weeks and sometimes even 43 weeks. But because of the pressure of the due date and having that pressure, Christine ended up agreeing to an induction she didn't want and having a C-section. And there was a lot of trauma around that we had to work through. And she had even said, I'm never having another baby again because I'll go overdue and they'll push me into a C-section because VBACs have to go into labor by a certain point, and I know that I won't get to that. And I said, okay, but we're going to do this. We're going to fight this. We're going to inform others about this. Like, oh, absolutely, but I'm not getting pregnant again. Christine got pregnant. It wasn't intentional. So I intentionally got pregnant with my daughter over the summer, and I was planning my empowered birth, and I was also dealing with the PTSD from the birth trauma before, and I'm like, I'm never going to the hospital again. So I was very intentional. So I'm going to be upfront and tell you that the empowered birth method originally came from my own trauma that I had to work through in order to have my empowered birth. And this seems to be a key, is that one of the superpowers that I have is I can go into your fear and I can find the desire on the other side of it, your dream. I can go into the trauma and I can find where you were powerful. And I can reflect that back to you. And I can go into the darkness of the fears and the punishments and the coercion and the manipulation and all of the scary things, the pressure. And I can see where there's actually some light there that I can pull out. And so here's what my little bit of wisdom is before we move forward. And I tell you about how this undermines your confidence, and I recap on that. I'm going to tell you that if you do not have an attachment to your due date as the day your baby is going to be born on, this is going to release a lot of the internal pressure that you face. Because if you can be like, you know what, that due date doesn't even mean anything. It could be a week from now. It could be a week before that. It could be 2 weeks. Once you understand this, and this is easier to do as a second-time mom than it is as a first-time mom, because I know you're eager to meet your baby, but at the same time, you have to recognize that the average gestation for a first-time mom is 41 weeks and 3 days. And if you happen to have a family history, like your mom went late with you, your sisters go late, your aunt goes late, it's not late. It's on time for you. And all of those scary statistics about stillbirth probably don't even apply. If you want to know more about that, you can always go and check out Rachel Reed's 2 books, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, which goes into the overview of physiological birth, and Respecting the Birth Process, as well as her other book, Why Induction Matters, which she wrote first. And this one also goes into all of the numbers and stats. There's also another book that is coming out. As of me recording this video, I actually have an advanced copy that I am reading, and I don't know exactly the date that this is coming out. I believe it's the end of the month, but Hensi Goer has a book on induction in her Take Charge of Birth series. So I'm reading through that right now, and it also is very helpful and informative. So when that is out, I do encourage you to get a copy of that one as well. She also has the Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. Remember, if you want to have the actual links, I have embedded them inside of the transcript of this video. So you just go into the description of the video and you click on the transcript. It just brings up the PDF. You can download that. I'm going to encourage you also to save the link, because if you save the link, you can come back. I do update these. So even if there's not a lot that's being shown right now, and it's just like, well, it's just highlighting a few things, it's not embedded with all of the links that I'd like, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to update them. You won't know this, though, unless you're subscribed to my Empowered Birth newsletter, which I send out weekly, and I'll say, hey, I've updated this transcript, or I've added a new resource here that you're going to want to check out. I created a workbook. I'm creating a free training. This is how you basically get into the community and understand what else is out there. Because again, the deeper you go with Empowered Birth, the more you're going to uncover treasures that are going to help you on your own empowered birth journey, because you are your own best expert. And nobody can tell you what day that your baby is supposed to be born on. Your body is on its own timeline, and so is your baby. Like fruit off a vine or a flower that's starting to bloom, we all are on our own clocks, and we don't know when that flower is going to open or when that fruit is going to ripen. But if we pluck it too soon, we'll never know. And this is where the induction happy culture that we have around due dates and getting things going before labor starts to make sure that you don't go overdue, this is where it's such a problem. So now that you understand the story where Christine ended up with a C-section because of the due date pressure, and for me, it was more feeling like I was about to be pushed into an induction if I didn't go into labor on my own, and recognizing the stress that happens with that. And then every time that you have a little mild contraction, you're like, is this it? Is that it? And you're hoping and trying to get into labor, and you're exhausting yourself. So now we're going to go into how this is a trap, okay? So how this is a trap of due dates undermining your confidence is, again, because most moms don't go into labor on their due date. And if we are in a society that has basically said babies come at 40 weeks, and if they come early, yay, then that means that you're really efficient at birthing. And if you go into labor at 40 weeks, you're average. And if you go after that, that's when you got to get things moving. This then causes you to think, I've got no signs of labor happening, and I'm not going to have this baby in time, and I'm doing all of the things, and maybe my body just doesn't go into labor on its own. How many stories do you hear in the mom groups where moms are like, I don't go into labor on my own. I have to be induced. I never have gone into labor on my own. Please help me. Tell me all of the secrets to getting into labor. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you this. There is no way to get a baby to leave your womb until they're ready unless you have a C-section. You can't give your baby an eviction notice. You can't get things moving on the outside. It doesn't matter how much you try to prepare your body. You will go into labor when your baby is ready. Your baby actually releases a protein in their lungs. Until that protein is released, until those changes are happening, until the oxytocin receptors are able to be built up in your uterus, it's not happening. It's not happening. Hensy Goer says this inside of her book, which again, it's an advanced copy, so I'm not going to go into all of it. But she says this, Rachel Reed says this, if you understand physiological birth, you need to understand that your cervix needs to move forward. It needs to thin out. Your uterus needs to have the oxytocin receptors. And the way that your body is designed, it's to make sure that that baby stays in, even as 7 pounds of baby are pushing on your cervix to try to get it to open. So your cervix is pointed all the way at the back. It can't be reached very easily. That's why if you actually give into a vaginal exam, which is a natural birth trap, and I will be talking about that after this video, so the next one in the series, you realize that actually your body is really smart. Because if the cervix is pointing in a direction baby's not ready, they come out too early and their lungs aren't ready. Their digestive system isn't ready. Their nervous system isn't ready. So your baby is perfecting these things, and trying to push on the outside only does one thing. It signals to your body that you are stressed. Stress creates adrenaline and cortisol. This is the enemy of oxytocin. If you are stressed, you cannot go into labor. So by undermining your confidence and thinking, I guess I don't go into labor on my own, you're now going to look for all of those things to push on the outside to get things going, which means you're exhausting yourself. You're stressing yourself out. And then in addition to that, how this leads to you getting interventions is because the medical system is now looking at you like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Your body is not working properly. We need to get things going. So they're going to suggest membrane sweeps first. And if those don't work, then they're going to suggest the prostaglandin gels. And if that doesn't work, they're going to suggest either breaking your waters or running Pitocin. And then suddenly you're having an induction. And then this leads to you either having a more painful and traumatic birth than you otherwise would have had, giving in and getting the epidural, getting a forceps or vacuum extraction delivery, which is also called ventouse, getting an episiotomy, tearing, because Pitocin can lead to tearing, or C-section. In fact, as a first-time mom, you are 3 times more likely to end up having a C-section if you induce labor. If your Bishop score is not high enough, and I'm going to be giving you resources about that too, then this can also lead to a C-section. And I can tell you right now that even at 41 weeks and 6 days, when Christine decided that she had run out of time and had to go for this induction, she had a Bishop score of 0 to 3, which means that baby was not ready. Her body was not ready. And this is what caused her to end up having a C-section. But the happy story is that now she knew this knowledge, and when she was having her home birth, which she didn't have a planned home birth, she wanted one, but she also knew that as a VBAC mom, it was going to be an uphill battle that she just didn't have the energy to fight. But happily, because she went into labor, she didn't realize she was so far along because she'd been induced. Her waters released as she was about to head out the door, and she called the midwife to the house, and she had her home birth. So recognize that your body is not broken. Your baby just isn't ready. And if you're allowing for the medical system to push interventions on you, this can sabotage you. And then the other thing about how it sabotages you is that if you're going into these mom groups and you're asking, how do I get into labor? This then reinforces the idea that, oh, I'm probably not going to go into labor because I've tried all of these things and my confidence is shot and the medical system is now putting pressure on me, and I'm now hearing these horror stories from these other moms who either didn't induce or did induce, and I'm scared. And then this labor and delivery nurse is inside of the mom groups, and she's telling me that I'm being reckless right now and I need to just think of my baby. And there's all of that mom shaming, all of that internalized trauma, even positive birth trauma, where the moms are like, oh, I was induced and it was fine and it was easy and it's no big deal. And you think, oh, so it shouldn't be any big deal for me. But you don't recognize that that mom was probably already going to go into labor on her own. So understanding overall that when you have this due date in your head, it is undermining your confidence. It is leading to the medical intervention, and it is also going to lead to you thinking that there's something wrong with you when you're looking into overall society and seeing all of these moms who get induced, and you're like, I guess our bodies just aren't working anymore. Instead of looking at the truth, the medical system is trying to fit you into their schedule. Okay? That is what they're doing. So the real reason why so many inductions are happening that are for the due date is because we have a culture where we have become used to going to the medical system for a normal physiological process. And because of that, the medical system is not set up for physiological birth. Now, I am working to shift this with the Empowered Birth Movement, and you can learn more about that if you go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and look at the philosophy and mission statement side of that overall guide and overview. But the fact is that right now we have birth workers who know that pushing induction is wrong. We have birth workers who wish that they could tell their clients to just stay home and not even go into the hospital for those tests, those non-stress tests, because they know that nothing's wrong and they know that it's going to undermine confidence. They know that. There are also birth workers that can't see their own fear. They can't see the other side of birth. They can't see that most physiological births happen in their own time, in their own way, and it's totally okay for a mom to go to 42 weeks with the healthy baby, and that stillbirth rate is not very high. And they know it's not very high, but instead they'll tell you that the rate doubles or the rate triples, and they don't tell you the numbers. Because what they're looking at, you have to understand, is they're looking at the bottom line. And often it's not even their bottom line, it's the administration. And the administration is trying to avoid risk. And the risk that they are trying to avoid is the catastrophic outcome that is going to cause them to look bad and get sued. So in their mind, you have to understand, in their mind, induction is the lesser of two evils because the baby comes out and the mom's no longer pregnant, and now we don't have to worry about any of those complications developing. There are also certain care providers out there that I call a Category 5. These are the ones that got into it because of the money, the prestige, the power, and a lot of them are on a power trip. A lot of them don't care how your birth experience is. They just want to be able to have the weekend off. So they're more likely to schedule your induction and make up some sort of excuse based on your due date and how you're overdue, and how the longer you go overdue, you're going to have your placenta not work anymore. It's going to calcify. It's aging. And what happens with this is that now they've put you in fear. They're pushing a button on you. And by pushing that button, maybe the first button doesn't work. Maybe the second button doesn't work. But a Category 5 will keep pushing until they find that button. So the way to avoid this, because a Category 5, again, is power control, they don't want to lose face. And how dare you question their years and years of medical knowledge? You're just a mom. You're just Googling. Like, you don't know anything. Your doula doesn't know anything. Your midwife doesn't even know anything. This OB knows everything, and they are going to try to exert their power. And this OB doesn't even have to be your OB. They could be the overseeing OB. And this is again what happened with Christine and me, because we had the same chauvinistic OB. Okay? He was the same one that the midwives had to consult. And because of that, he was telling her a little bit of a lie. He's like, well, when you switch to my practice after 42 weeks, I'd be fine to you going for 43 weeks. Now, I know that's not true. I know that the whole time he would have undermined her confidence, and Christine also was quite aware of this. She did not trust him. She had good reason not to trust him, because the same person had also said to me, well, if you make an appointment in my office, then we can discuss home birth, but my answer is probably still going to be no. And I'm like, yeah, why would I waste my time listening to you trying to tell me how I am being a ridiculous little woman who doesn't know anything and trying to scare me and push all the buttons and be the big strong man, the doctor knows everything. Yeah, no. But understanding that in a lot of hospitals, the midwives do not have the control. The doctors do. And the doctors see pathology. So they are either doing it because they just don't want their authority questioned and they don't care, or they're doing it for a variety of other reasons, such as they don't want to go against the organization. They could lose their job. They could get in trouble. They could get written up. They have never seen this before. They're afraid, and they think that something could go wrong, and they don't feel comfortable. It's outside of their scope. They're afraid of being seen as the ringleader. Like, there's so many things that they could be afraid of, and those are within categories 1 through 4 inside of my birth advocacy report. Now, if you go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit, then you'll be able to get this toolkit, which is basically a Google Drive where I put in workbooks and I put in guides and I put in other additional resources. And at the same time, the birth advocacy report is always in there. I will never take that out. Or the other option, if you prefer the self-study path, is that you can go and get your Empowered Birth Workshop, and then you get access to the birth advocacy report within the email. So recognizing that there's 2 different ways to get this report. The third is you just email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and either myself or one of my team members will give it to you. Now, understanding that the medical system has this view, and understanding that they are going to try to suggest, well, let's just check you and see where you're at. You're still not showing signs of labor. Well, maybe you need to start getting things going. We'll do a sweep. Or they're like, you're having a VBAC, but we only let you go to a certain point, and if you go past that date, then it's a C-section. Or even if you're attempting a vaginal breech birth, or you have twins, or you are an older mom, and they say you need to give birth before your due date because risk of whatever comes up, that is putting pressure on you. And then finally, not only within the medical system, but in the overall birth culture, how annoying is it for people to keep asking you if you've had that baby yet? Exactly. So the way around this, first of all, is if you want to have a wild pregnancy, then nobody knows your due date. You just have your conception date or what you think your conception date is. And you just go by, okay, my last period, 10 months from that. This is how women used to track when their baby was going to be due around, and it was a due month. It wasn't a due date. It was a due month. It's like 10 lunar months. That makes more sense. Now, then the medical system went and confined this. And again, you can learn more about this inside of In Your Own Time by Dr. Sarah Wickham, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage by Dr. Rachel Reed. Like, this is just everywhere. The birth workers that I am in connection with, we know this stuff, but you may not know this. because you're immersed in this culture where we've been taught that the due date is 40 weeks. And it might be 41 weeks in some areas of the world. There are lots of women who are like, well, I'm in France and the due date is actually 41 weeks. I'm like, well, that's better. And at the same time, well, there's still a cutoff. There should not be a cutoff. Your baby is going to grow to the point where they need to come out, and they will. But if we keep putting a cutoff on this, that's like picking fruit off a vine just because when we planted the seed, we expected it to grow at a certain point, but the fruit isn't ready. So recognizing that, now we're going to ask the question, how do we get out of this? Okay, so I'm going to give you one little tip here. For dealing with your friends and family, this is what I did, and this is what I suggest everybody in my Empowered Birth community do. This is what I tell my clients to do. Take your due date and add 4 weeks. Tell your family that date. So basically what happened with my second is I was not going to have anybody telling me, like, have you had that baby yet? Or otherwise asking, when are you going into labor so that I can come for a visit? I wanted to set stronger boundaries. And the reason you want to do this is because after that baby is born, especially if it's your first, everybody's going to want to come and see the baby. What you want to be doing is resting and bonding with your baby. You're not going to want a whole bunch of visitors. You may think you do, but as a first-time mom, I thought I'd want a whole bunch of visitors, and I realized that actually I was exhausted and I didn't want to play hostess. So with my second, I set strong boundaries. I also didn't tell anybody the real due date. I said it was April 12th, when in truth it was March 29th, and my daughter was born on the 31st. So understanding that if you do that, then even if you go past your due date and you get to 42 weeks, you have now psychologically programmed your family to think that you're still not even approaching your due date. They're not going to bug you, which means you're not going to have that external pressure. If you also have it ingrained in your head that that's the due date, that you keep telling everybody that's the due date, then it's also going to psychologically program you a little bit to think that's the due date. If I go before that, I'm early. So you're no longer late. You're on time. And then you don't have to stress on the outside. Now, how this works with the Empowered Birth method is you need to have the right mindset going in. You need to be past your fear. You need to be working through all of those things that scare you about going past your due date so that you can find the desire on the other side, or challenge that fear and be like, well, that's not true because I've now got all of the education. So you're able to uproot it. But if you don't know where it is, you can't see it, you can't challenge it. The other part of the right mindset is knowing that you are your own best expert and decision maker. You know when your baby's ready to be born, not the medical system. You are the one who gets to make the decisions, not the medical system. And if you're starting to think, maybe I should induce, I'm also going to let you know that there is a module inside of your Empowered Birth workshop titled The Induction Traps. So avoiding the induction trap. And this goes into the systems that your baby is preparing at the end of pregnancy. It goes into how to avoid the induction traps. There's some guides that come with it as well. And again, all you have to do is go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/workshop, and get that. Now, the other thing you need to know is that once you have that right mindset figured out and you know you're aiming for a true natural birth, you know what your dream is. Induction is not your dream. Pushing on the outside and exhausting yourself before labor so that you end up with a longer labor that's more stressful is not your dream. So having your dream and also having your backup ideas of where your fears are coming from and releasing them and creating your backup plan allows you to also get the right education, because you don't want to be in information overwhelm or in a trauma loop and getting too much information can actually lead you to doubting yourself. Instead, when you have the right mindset and you know where you're going, you know that you're not going to go over here to go and get information that you don't need, that's just going to bog up your brain, when it's like, no, it's over here. So if you're not a plus size mom, you're not going to find information on induction for plus size moms. You're going to find induction for your own conditions or your own healthiness that you have as a mom. If you are in your 40s, you're going to look for information on induction in your 40s, but you're not just going to look at the pathology, because that may not apply to you even with your age. And you want to look at both sides. You want to look at the medical side, and you also want to look at the physiological side. And then you want to basically marry those together to create the third emergent entity of what's your truth. So this is part of the empowered birth method. And of course, I do go deeper into this. I have 3 paths for working with me. One, of course, is the do-it-yourself path, which you are basically going through all of these trainings and you're getting the notes and you're asking your questions. You can put those into the comments section. You can also email me directly, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. If you are inside of the Empowered Birth community, you're subscribed to the newsletter, I can check that just by seeing what email you're using. Then what you want to do instead is you want to hit reply to any one of those emails and ask your question that way. Then I can get back to you within 1 to 2 business days because you're priority. If you are on the self-study path, that is another way that you can basically go through the whole course and you can do the workbooks. If you have those workbooks completed, then when you ask your question, we have more to work with. And then with that, I can look at, do you need to go for your laser coaching call now? Or what are we going to do? Are we going to have you upgrade to self-study VIP? Or are we going to just basically give you another resource? Because again, information is free and I only charge for access to me, and I don't work with just anyone. It is a steep price tag to work with me. It is a time commitment, and oftentimes when I'm running my group classes, it's about 3 to 5 people. Sometimes I'll get as high as 20, but no more than that for the really deep dive stuff, because I've seen the transformation that it does for my students to have those groups intimate. And they were all coaching each other as I was coaching them and holding the space and container. That leads into pillar number 3 on the list of the Empowered Birth Method, which is the right environment. You need fertile soil to be able to thrive. You need the right nutrients, education, information, support, all of those things. If you don't have that, if you don't have that safe container, then you're going into a mom group, for example. This is part of the right environment. You go into a mom group and all of the moms are talking about induction. All of the moms are talking about all the dangers that happen when they go past their due date. There's all these horror stories. Is that the right environment for you? No, because there's no information in there that is actually going to help you. Instead, it's more shaming, blaming, making you wrong, giving you the same misinformation, telling you to just listen to your doctor, or they're sharing the wrong articles. Or they're sharing the right ones, but you can't make sense of them, and nobody in the group can seem to make sense of them because they're all scared. They don't have the right mindset, so they're looking at that same information that you are, but they're terrified, so they're going through their lens. And then this comes into the right facilitators. If your care provider is very, very induction happy, and they believe in induction, and all of their clients go for an induction, and they don't understand why you can't just go for an induction, they're not the right care provider for you. They are not going to help you to get out of your fear. They are not going to help you to be able to go past your due date without a lot of stress and frustration. And a lot of times when my clients recognize that their care provider is not supportive, if they can't switch care providers, they distance themselves from that care provider so that they can get their mindset all situated and get that education. We usually get on WhatsApp and I'm texting with them before their appointments. I'm hyping them up. I'm telling them, like, okay, remember, you are your own best expert. Remember, even if they are pushing every button on you, you do not have to act on it. You can tell them you'll get back to them. If they don't have their partner with them, that's even harder because then they have to come back to it and be like, okay, now I need a hug. But if they do have their partner, then that leads to pillar number 5, the right support. And as part of the right support, your partner needs to be on board. They can't be deferring to the doctor and saying, well, you know, honey, they keep saying that this could happen and I'm scared, so maybe we should go for that induction. Maybe we should get things going. Maybe you don't know. No, your partner needs to be the one taking one look after your doctor says whatever thing that they're saying, or a family member, like maybe the nosy mother-in-law who thinks that you should be bouncing on your ball and getting things going, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a dead baby. Like, you need to understand that this is our culture and your partner needs to be on your side. Now, go check out some of my other videos on how to get your partner on board with your birth plan, because this is important. You need to have all 5 of these pillars optimized. If you don't, then this is when you're going to fight, beg, compromise. We can get you back on track, but you have to recognize what pillar is missing. And this is where the laser coaching usually comes in, because even if you've gone the self-study route and you didn't get self-study VIP, which comes with the free laser coaching call, you can still choose to upgrade at any time to get that call. Or what you can do is you can just be like, you know what? I am going to just send an email and ask a question and see what we can do. Because sometimes you don't even need to get on that call. Sometimes the things that moms ask, I'm like, I can just send you a resource. I've created something on this. So doing that allows you to protect your time. You don't have to pay for anything that you don't need. And you're not stuck. You're not stuck with, I have to have this consult or everything falls apart. Instead, it's a choice. Because you know what? You are your own best expert. You deserve to invest in yourself and in your empowered birth. And if money is tight, if it is an issue, I would much, much prefer that you invest your money on your birth location or on a doula. There's some other things that I talk about inside a video on things that you want to invest in more than just childbirth education or coaching, and recognize where you're at. Because, see, the thing about the 3 paths to empowered birth is that I have these 3 paths so that you can pick where you need to go. For some moms, the do-it-yourself path is the most empowering thing that you can do, because you like to be able to sift through all of the information and pick out your own pieces and piece together your own map. And maybe you ask 1 or 2 questions and you're like, got it. I got the last missing piece that I needed to go on and have my empowered birth. Thank you. If that is you, if you love to do things yourself and you don't really feel that you need the help, then I want you to be able to do that. The only thing I ask in return, since I am giving you all of this information for free, is that you like, share, subscribe to the channel, do your best to comment inside of the videos, go onto the social media, engage, because this allows the algorithm to show this to more moms, because I can't do that part on my own. I could take all of the money that I make and put it into ads, or I could take that money and I could put it into birth houses and things that are actually going to help moms to be able to have more options in their care. What would you rather I do? Would you rather I put this all into ads and splash myself all over social media and run an ad budget? Or would you rather I take what you pay me for my books, my courses, any of my coaching, and I put it back into things that are actually going to support moms moving forward? Some moms live too far away. from a hospital to have a home birth and feel safe about it. There's some moms that are like, you know what? I can't hire a doula right now. I don't have the funds, but I need one so desperately to be able to advocate for me. What if we were able to run foundations that allowed for doulas to be given to those moms? So doulas still get paid fairly. They don't have to cut their rates. And it's not controlled by the medical system. Let me be clear about that. Because currently a lot of out-of-hospital birth options still have restrictions. I'm talking about the fact that we have birth centers in some places, but you still risk out of them if you go past your due date. And then you're back in the same trap. Well, what if you had something that was a little bit less of a birth center, still had those resources available? You might even have a doula or a midwife still in the building, but it was your home, like an Airbnb for birth. Well, this is part of what Jenny and I are working towards. We've been collaborating for the last several years, and it's not ready yet, but she technically has something called the Birth House Network. It is basically a directory where you can put in the Airbnbs that would be used for birth houses. And what I want to do is I want to build these. I want to repurpose old homes that maybe people wouldn't live in today, but could be used as birth houses and clinics for midwives who want to practice in a more holistic way and don't want the medical system breathing down their necks. I want to be able to support this, and that is going to take an entire movement, which is part of why I have the mission and philosophy statement on my website. So understanding the do-it-yourself path, if you're going to take that, yeah, you're not putting any money into the movement, but at the same time, you are important. You do have a voice. Your voice matters. If you comment on the videos, if you like, share, subscribe, pass this on to other moms, pay it forward, a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. The other part is the self-study. And of course, I have two tiers within that. One is the complete self-study, which you basically put your name, your email in, you get a workbook, or you get the toolkit. Basically, the Empowered Birth Toolkit has workbooks in it that you can go through. Your Empowered Birth also has questions that you can go through in chapters 6 and 7 of the book. And then there's also your Empowered Birth Workshop. All of my courses basically have a self-study component where you are doing homework. If you do the homework, then you're going to get the result. But if you need a little bit of help or you like somebody to walk you through the process, then you can upgrade by paying for the course and you get self-study VIP. This is still affordable, but now you get that extra help. You can go and email the team, you can get some support, you can get additional resources. Even if you don't need that laser coaching call, which is technically what you're paying for when you get self-study VIP, what you can also get is just, I look at your stuff, I read over your notes, I read over your birth plan. This is actually how one of my clients, Rebecca, started out. She had gone through my Empowered Birth Workshop, which I'd run free through a Facebook group, and then she created her birth plan. And a week after the workshop ran, she emailed me and said, can you look over my birth plan? I want to have a VBAC, and I want to make sure that this is actually going to achieve my goal because I don't want another C-section again. I've already had 2. So I looked over her plan, and I realized that we needed to schedule a call. So I sent her an email, and I'm like, okay, Rebecca, like I've looked this over. There's a few things that I could kind of highlight here. I can see where we could turn this around. Are you free to get on a call? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And we scheduled that. Then I got on the call with her and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let you know I'm not selling you into anything. I don't even know if you'd be right for the program. We'll figure that out as we go, but I'm just going to look over your birth plan and we're going to go over this. So I went over it with her. I pointed things out and like, you said you wanted the IV. And do you really want that? And she's like, no, I actually don't want that. I just think I have to have that. I'm like, well, you don't. She's like, I don't? I'm like, no, you don't have to have that. And I'm like, It also says here that you're having the hospital birth. Is that really what you want? She's like, no, I would really like to have a home birth, but midwives don't support it. And I'm like, okay, well, the thing is that you could have a home birth and change your mind. And I walked her through that process and explained it. And you can go check out some of my other videos on this where I talk about choosing your birth location, your backup hospitals. You can also read my book, Your Empowered Birth. And if you have any questions, you can just email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I'm happy to share the resource with you. You can also look inside of the interview section where I did do an interview with Rebecca after she had her new baby. It was amazing. She had a beautiful, empowered, unassisted home birth after 2 cesareans. And this was the transformation where I went from thinking, does my empowered birth method work in all cases? To, oh yeah, this totally works. And then with Jenny's, of course, it was like the high-risk mom even can do this. So recognizing that if you've got this course that is completely free and you go through it, and at any point you feel that you need any extra help, it is there for you, okay? So self-study VIP, as I said, you can get that laser coaching call. I can look over your stuff, or one of my team members can look it over, and we can see where you're at and see where you might need to go. And if you want to work with us further, you can, or we can just direct you to another resource or another course, and you can go through that, okay? Because the last path is premium coaching. This is basically, I have my top level premium coaching where I only take 1 to 2 clients every few years. And this is what Rebecca basically enrolled in way back in 2021. She went for the premium coaching. She also chose to do the group coaching model. So she was in 2. She was in the premium 1-to-1 coaching, which was basically we would meet every single week for about an hour to 2 hours, depending on what she needed. And I would go over with her birth plan. I was taking her through a birth video and I was answering questions. We brought her partner in. He asked his questions. I prepared him to be able to be that strong support for Rebecca as she was going through her labor. By the time they were at the end of the pregnancy, Rebecca and her partner were excited for labor to start. When her waters released, she was so psyched. She's like, oh my gosh, it's happening. I'm finally going into labor on my own. I was induced with my first and talked into a C-section with my second again. And this is the first time I've gone into labor on my own. And it is actually more mild than the induction. And oh my gosh, it did go past my due date. So recognizing she didn't have any fear. She wasn't trying to push on the outside. She was just following her body and she was following her process. And in the end, she had this most beautiful healing home birth after 2 cesareans that she is still to this day shouting from the rooftops about because of how much it transformed her. And again, I don't work with just anyone that comes to me. This is a steep price tag. This is premium level. So if you're not ready for that, or you can't afford that, or it's just not the right time for that, then the next level is the group coaching Mistress Mind, which is, again, what Rebecca was part of, where it was just me and Jenny and Rebecca and another mom, Lisa, and we were all in this incubator, and we would sit for 2 hours on Zoom in a group coaching call, and she would just ask the questions. So this, again, is tying into that right environment, because even though the outside world is having all these stories, oh, VBAC2C mom, she's not going to be able to go into labor by 39 weeks, there's a problem, because she was in this right environment, not only in our group class, but in our group chat, she was able to keep her mindset strong. She was able to stay in the game and not crumble under that pressure. She had the right facilitators in me. She had the right support of the other moms in the group, which we all became really good friends. And she had that right education because we were all sifting through the information and dropping it into the chat, which then allowed her to have that right mindset. So again, if you don't have that incubator of support or you're not able to get into that, by being part of the Empowered Birth community, even at the self-study level, even just by following the newsletter and following these videos, that can protect you against that outside fear and manipulation and the pressure to induce. So now that I have gone through the 3 paths and told you about how this undermines your confidence and told you about all the things that the medical system basically does to push you into an induction and why they're doing it and why it's not always because they're out to get you, but because of the system that they're in, let's just quickly recap because there has been a lot. And I'm also going to remind you at this point about the rule of 3 before we recap. Now, the rule of 3 is simple. If you hear something at least 3 times, you are more likely to remember it. If you're taking notes, you're even more likely to remember it, even if you never go back and read those notes. So the rule of 3, basically the first time you watch the video, you're getting the overview. You now know what's in the video. The second time you watch the video, you're going to have those aha moments of, oh, I didn't notice this piece before because I was too busy trying to absorb this piece over here, but now I can come back and see it. I even do this with my reading. I will go back and read a book another time, sometimes 3 times, sometimes more than that, to go and grab all of the information so that then I can teach it to you. All of these books behind me, I read them and then I go through and I find the best stuff. And then I reiterate that to you in a way that is easier for you to digest. So you can pick my brain, absolutely. Question things, ask me. Say, hey, do you know anything about this? Even if I don't have the information, I am connected to a larger birth network. I can find it for you. Or somebody in my Empowered Mom Circle already knows about it. Okay? So you get that overview is part 1. You find the aha moments is part 2. You're starting to find the treasure. And by the 3rd time that you watch something, you've got it. You might not even do the work yet. You might be like, I'm not going to do the homework or I'm not going to go to that next step until I've got this. And that is okay. That is okay. With the self-study path, I do have action steps that you need to take. If you go and check out the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth mini challenge, then you'll kind of see a little bit of a sample of how this usually goes, where it's almost like a labor process if you really pay attention. I get you a little bit warmed up. Then we go into the deeper, denser part of the training, but you've been warmed up for it, so you're ready for it. And then you get to that sharp peak where it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much here, so much to unpack. I don't know if I'm going to finish this. If you have that direct support from me or my team or just the encouragement of the community, then you're like, I can do this. I can get through this course because I know what's on the other side of this. I know that there's a transformation. So there were a lot of moms, and I'm going to be completely honest about this, is that they went through the Empowered Birth Workshop way back in 2021, and they'd watch day 1, and they'd watch day 2, but they wouldn't finish it. They didn't get the transformation, but they got enough to get them going, and they're like, okay, I got what I need, but they didn't get the full transformation. The difference between those moms and Rebecca and Lisa and Jenny is that they got a little bit, but they didn't get the full experience. And there were things that they'd come back and say, hey, why didn't this work? And I'm like, well, did you go through the whole workshop? It's like, yeah, no, it was 5 days and it was really long. And I'm like, I know, I understand that. It was an hour long each day. But did you do the homework? And they're like, no, I didn't do the homework. And I'm like, okay, but all of these questions were in the workshop. All of these questions were in, like, you could have done this within the homework. And this is, again, why information is free and I charge for access to me, because I used to give free calls and the moms would ask these questions, but it didn't matter if I stayed on the call with them for an hour. they, in the end, still ended up with a C-section. They ended up with an induction. I tell them over and over, your due date is a guess date. But they couldn't get that information and process it through their lens of fear and trying to please everybody. So the 5 pillars allows you to become your own best expert, because that is the first step. You need to become your own best expert. And again, if you want to know more about that, I do have my book, Your Empowered Birth. You can go to the Empowered Birth book playlist. If your mindset is still not strong, if you're still dealing with a lot of fears, the Reset Your Mindset for Empowered Birth Challenge is really the first step before you even get to Your Empowered Birth. And then Your Empowered Birth Workshop solidifies this. So again, there are 3 things that you can do without paying a single cent. All you have to do is go and say yes to your empowered birth and get out of those natural birth traps, because these are the things that moms often say, oh, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, oh no, it's a trap. It's a trap. You're falling into a trap. Get out of the trap. Please get out of the trap. So again, let's recap very, very quickly. Why don't we want to be dealing with our due date? Well, first of all, it's undermining your confidence that you're going to go into labor on your own. You are going to go into labor on your own. You are not likely to go into labor on an arbitrary timeline that only applies to about 30% of the population. Go and watch one of my other videos on the truth on due dates, and you'll really see this. Or go read Dr. Sarah Wickham's book in your own time, because she just blows it wide open. The other thing, of course, is that if you are fixated on your due date, it is much easier for the medical system to use that to their advantage to schedule your induction just in case, or otherwise pressure you into tests and things that monitor you, or scare you into thinking that something's going to go wrong if you continue to stay pregnant. And of course, the third thing is that if you are focused on your due date, you are pushing on the outside, sabotaging yourself, and possibly even stalling your labor from even starting, because you are feeding your body all of these hormones and adrenaline. You are then also going into the mom groups, which reinforces the due date. And then you're also dealing with the medical system and that pressure. And you sabotage by either trying to get into labor and having a lot of stop and start labor. Labor doesn't start. You end up with the induction, or you're just exhausted by the end when you finally go into labor and you don't have the stamina to keep going. And things are much more painful and traumatic than if you were just sitting there like Rebecca was at the end of her pregnancy. And what a lot of my clients are doing, which is they're sitting and watching movies with their partner. They're cuddling up on the couch. They are getting the last minute details done. They are having a bath. They have turned off their phone. They only have me on WhatsApp, and they're just keeping me posted as they have things happening. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's normal. And now remember, we're not doing on the outside. We're just going to let this unfold. Because remember what happened when we did on the outside, or when other people told us to do on the outside. You don't want another C-section. And they're like, no, I don't. And it's like, okay, well, if you don't want another C-section, you got to get out of that mindset, because your body needs to warm up, especially if you've had a C-section, because your uterus needs to adjust for that. It may be stop and start labor over several weeks to warm your uterus up. It might not happen all at once. And this can actually be a much more gentle process for you and for your baby and for your uterus. So recognizing we aim for a true natural birth. We have our backup plans, and we pull back and use them only as needed. And we trust that we are our own best experts. And we also make sure that we have the right mindset, the right education, the right environment, the right facilitators, and the right support. And the Empowered Birth Method allows you to do that. So if you found value in this video, remember, this is the do-it-yourself path. Please like, share, subscribe, engage, comment, pass this on to other moms that need it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Either myself or one of my team members will be happy to assist you. And if you are more of the self-study type, then you know your paths. You can go and get your Empowered Birth workshop. You can go and read your Empowered Birth, and you can get the Empowered Birth toolkit and get on the Empowered Birth newsletter. The other thing I'm going to tell you before I go about the Empowered Birth newsletter is this isn't just about birth, because when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take that power from you again, which means that the very same things that you learn through the Empowered Birth method will also help you transform every aspect of your life. I have used the Empowered Birth method to get out of a toxic and abusive relationship that was absolutely draining me, and I was in this trauma bond and I couldn't seem to escape. I had been in it for 13 years, and by using the Empowered Birth method, I finally broke free. I healed myself very quickly. I have found my true love partnership. I know what I deserve. I know what I want, and I am not settling anymore in love. I have the most beautiful, transformative love that is standing as a trampoline for my dreams and a sanctuary for my heart. And I know that he loves me. And the thing is that when you have that right support, as Rebecca had with her partner, as I witnessed, it is transformative. They become your absolute rock during your labor. So you want to have that beautiful transformative relationship with your partner, either a current one or recognizing that this isn't right and you need to set yourself free so you can have that beautiful relationship. Whatever the path is for you, and I can't tell you what it is, only you know, the Empowered Birth method works for that too. Or hey, maybe you want to stay home with your baby. Maybe you don't want to go back to work, or maybe you do, but you want to do it in a way that honors your motherhood and also balances out your career aspirations. The Empowered Birth method does that too. In fact, a lot of the things that I taught my clients, they went on and they created their own businesses. Jenny has the Birth House Network and Empress Birthworks because of what she learned with the Empowered Birth method. She is also a website designer. She designs t-shirts. She is really thriving in her creativity because of the Empowered Birth method. So again, when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take that power away from you again. So whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business, or anything else that you're creating in your life, or you're rebirthing a new version of yourself, Empowered Birth is here for you. Empowering Moms is here for you. And all I ask, again, is that you pay it forward, like, share, subscribe to this channel, and pass this on to other moms who can benefit. Because again, a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. And if you keep following with this series, as I said, I do have a list of 20 traps. You can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies to know what's coming up on the list. But the next one that we're going to be tackling is vaginal exams and how this basically ties into the natural birth traps and your due date. And there's something else after that as well. So thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey, and I will see you next week. Namaste.